Okay, normally I like to dive right into code and just show you how to do things right away, but I think it's important to take a lecture and explain what a single page application is because it's very, very different in some ways from traditional Apex and Visual Force architecture. So first of all, we have this pattern where we have our client-side code and our server-side code. On our client side, we have the HTML, which is the view, which when you say you press a button, it calls a JavaScript controller, which would then call a JavaScript helper, which would then call an Apex controller, which could then access the database. Now this seems very, very kind of complicated for what it is, and it is a little tricky. It's not really MVC, it's more MCCV, Model Controller View. But the important thing about single page applications is you can do a lot on the client side. And the whole reason for this is with a single page application, you can dynamically rewrite the current page rather than load an entire new page from a server. A big win for this is it doesn't interrupt the user experience when they're interacting with the page. So typically in single page applications, either all of the code is downloaded from the server initially, or it's kind of dynamically loaded in the background as needed. Another thing with many single page applications is rather than, kind of building a web page, like a document, it's more like assembling of building blocks. So say we want to build this search bar right here, and we have a search bar, we type in, and it displays search results down here. So, typically we'd build a container, we'd add in the search bar, and then add some way of iterating over the results. This is a little different in a single page application component-based approach, whereas we actually have to build each one of these building blocks. So what we would do is we'd want to break this down into its tiniest pieces. So I think the most obvious one is we'd have a search bar component, literally just search bar. And this could be theoretically reused across many components. Now, we would want to place the search bar in a container component, which would also contain another container component. I know this is all abstract, just bear with me. It'll make more sense as we go through the course. Imagine this container component, it's not something you see, it's just an abstract thing like a div or something. Now, within this search results container component, we can add in the individual results. So the idea is that you build it in a way that's reusable. You should only have to build one result component, and you could display that multiple times within the results container component. In our example, we have this search box. How are we going to know what to display down here? Because ideally, you want to create something called a dumb component. Whereas if you're adhering to a strict separation of duties, a dumb component would only handle the UI. So this would only be, for this component, you'd only have to pass it this text value that you want there. And that's why container components are kind of important. These container components can store information that is consumed by child components to render information. So say we enter a search term here. That search term could be stored on this container component. The container component could take that search term and call an Apex controller to get results, and then bring back results from the database, and then have a list available here, like result 1, result 2, result 3. And basically what you would do is pass this list of results, or this array of results, to this result container component, which would then know how to render itself based on the information you provide it. Again, I know this is very abstract at this point. I promise you it will make sense as we start coding. So just bear with me. If you're not 100% confident with this, don't worry about it. I'm sure with coding, it will make a lot more sense.